We are going to solve the quadratic equation by factoring. X squared plus 4x minus 21 equals 0. What we're trying to do here is we're just trying to figure out what value of x is going to make this equation true. So we want to begin by factoring our equation. So when we are factoring, we're coming up with two factors that multiply together to get 0. So you guys already know that when you multiply 0 by anything, you're going to get 0. This is called the zero product property. 0 times anything, we'll use a for anything, is going to equal 0. So once we factor, we know that one of these factors will have to be 0 in order for the whole equation to be true. So let's begin by factoring. So we start by taking the square root of x squared. And the reason why we do that is because when we multiply these factors together, we're going to have x times x, and that gives us our x squared. So we have to divide up that x to x and x in the second factor. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to get negative 21, but add to get a 4. Now here's where you get those numbers. And negative 21 is the number in your quadratic that does not have an x attached to it. It's not the coefficient of any variable. The 4, you guys can already see where that comes from. That is the coefficient of x. That means it's the number that you find that's written in front of x with the sign. So you got to look, notice how I circled the signs with those. You've got to look at those signs. So now we kind of have a puzzle. We want to figure out two numbers that multiply to get negative 21, add to positive 4. So I know 7 times 3 is 21. If I want it to be negative, one of those has to be negative, the other has to be positive. So I can try positive 7 and negative 3, or negative 7 and positive 3. I know when I add these two, I'm going to get a negative number because 7 has a bigger absolute value than 3 does. And when I add the second two, these are the two that we are going to want to use, positive 7 minus 3, that's going to give me my positive 4. So I take those two numbers, plus 7 minus 3, and I put them here into my factored quadratic. I have plus 7 and x minus 3. So those are my two factors. Now, by the zero product property, we know that if x plus 7 equals 0, then the whole equation equals 0. Or if x minus 3 equals 0, then my whole equation is going to equal 0. And then we solve for x by subtracting 7 from our first equation, and we have x equals negative 7. And then we solve the second one by adding 3, and we have x equals 3. So we write our final answer as x equals negative 7 or 3. And a lot of times we just put a comma there to show that's either or. An interesting fact that you'll notice after doing a few of these, when you find your two numbers, so this circle, this green circle here that we have, the positive 7, negative 3, notice that our final answer are the opposite numbers of those two. They'll be the opposite signs. And that's because we had to do the opposite operation to solve for x. So we got our negative 7 and positive 3. That's the end of the lesson. Thank you for joining me.